strays away from the ideals of justice. The goal of America is freedom. Abused and scorned though we may be, our destiny is tied up in the destiny of America. Before the Pilgrim Fathers landed at Plymouth, we were here. Before Jefferson etched across the pages of history the majestic words of the Declaration of Independence, we were here. Before the beautiful words of the Star-Spangled Banner were written, we were here. For more than 2 centuries, our forebears labored here without wages. They made cotton king. They built the homes of their masters in the midst of the most humiliating and oppressive conditions, yet out of a bottomless vitality.
So you just heard Dr. Martin Luther King tell you that before the Pilgrim's father landed here, you were here.
Our forefathers weren't the Pilgrims. We didn't land on Plymouth Rock. The rock was landed on us.
Now, what did he mean by this? What exactly did he mean by saying you were here? This was towards the end of his speech that day. And he slipped it right in there, you know, to the people that was listening to him that day. So it's either 2 things, right? Well, there's only could be one thing. But basically, to people who are still kind of brainwashed, only one thing they could assume is that he's talking about maybe Africans, slaves that had come over and that were already there. And we're talking about 1620, right? When the Pilgrims arrived in 1620, he's saying you were there. You were already there before 1620. You know, they say the first Negroes that arrived, or African slaves that arrived in America, so-called African slaves, was in 1619 in Virginia. Alright, so is he talking about that, or is he talking about the aboriginals, copper-colored aboriginals, so-called Negroes that were living in New England? And we're going to talk about those first Africans from 1619, so-called Africans. We're going to show you where they really came from and who they really were a little bit later. So now in New England, this is what the Pilgrims encountered. Now, as you can see from this image, people who were these aboriginally here in America first, and then the difference between those that were here later that are called Native Americans today. The scientists are saying this, right? It says anthropologists have long puzzled over why Native Americans don't look more like their ancient. Now let's go to this journal. It's from an anthropological science magazine journal. This came out in 1939. Volume 38 actually spoke of the same thing. It was like the beginning of the talk, and the next month for volume 39 they continue to talk about it. So it says here, see if I can zoom into it. So again, it's Man, a monthly record of anthropological science, published under the direction of the Royal Anthropological Institute of Great Britain and Ireland. It says here, Negro skeletal remains from Indian sites in the West Indies. It says the recent paper in this journal by Buxton, Trevor and Julian, they're talking about the previous article I mentioned, right? Volume 47, 1938, implies that an undeformed Negroid physical type inhabited the Virgin Islands in pre-Columbian times. Not only is this implication contrary to previously accepted findings for the Antillean area, as will be shown later, but it also fails to give adequate consideration to the possibility of these skeletal remains representing intrusive Negro burials. The mere presence of skeletons in a sand or shell mound of Indian origin, like in careful stratigraphic records, is not certain evidence of primary association with the accompanying artifacts. Moreover, I venture to say that few physical anthropologists familiar with American Indian skulls would mistake for Indians those illustrated by Buxton, Trevor, and Julian. Indeed, most physical anthropologists would probably be less conservative and say Negro instead of Negroid. Alright, so 100% Negro. He wouldn't even say it's Negro-ish, right? Or Negroid. It's a Negro or copper-colored person, right? In support of the opinion that these authors are describing Negroes, one, I wish to present a similar case from Barbados, British West Indies, From correspondence with Mr. E.M. Shilstone of Bridgetown, Barbados, it appears that in August 1933, he commenced to excavate a sandy ridge about 50 yards from high water mark on the shore of Chancery Lane on the southern coast of the island. The ridge proved to be a kitchen, midden containing many objects of Arawak workmanship. Among other things encountered in the site was a skeleton, lying on its left side at about 20 inches under the surface. Mr. Shilstone believed this skeleton to be that of an Arawak Indian, and in 1937 presented it as such to the U.S. National Museum. Upon reconstruction of the skull from the many fragments in which it was received in Washington, I felt justified in calling it a Negro, for reasons that will appear from the following description. Two views of the Barbados skulls are shown in Play D1 and 2. Comparison with the two skulls shown in the paper by Buxton, Trevor, and Julian indicates that the individual and sex differences are no more than would be expected of the range of variation in a single race. Certainly, however, such negroid features as alveolar prognatism, broad nose, and low orbits are more pronounced in the case of the Virgin Island skulls. So as you can see, there's information here correlating more findings of skulls, so it's not just in one location, right? So far we got a couple of different sources, right? In the same article, and just look for yourselves. Alright, so before we go into the historical accounts of what these early colonists, explorers, settlers, pilgrims, conquistadors saw, described as the characteristics of these aborigines or indigenous people they were encountering, the colors, how they were, their the complexion, their stature, the body type, and everything. We're gonna go over some words that they're gonna mention a lot, such as copper colored. So as we all know, if you don't know the color of copper, right, let's take a look at a few examples, right? Copper, we know that the penny is made out of copper, and even the old pennies were even a little bit darker, so it does make sense when they say copper colored, who they're referencing, right? And we just need to use our senses for that. They also mention a lot, of course, brown skin. We know as well who is brown skin and what color usually the shades of brown are. We have a reference of as well as Swarti. And Swarti, basically the meaning of Swarti just means dark skin or black or a dark complexion. They're also the reference of the Aborigines being of cinnamon color, right? We know what that looks like as well, as well as the different shades of cinnamon, as you can see in this cinnamon color palette. And of course, we all know the term the red man, right? They used to call the Indians the red man, but when they're talking about red, they're really basically talking almost copper or a brownish red, not red like an apple or red like a red rose, but they're talking about that mahogany, right? Cinnamon, copper color kind of red. And I wanted to read something to you here from New York Times regarding the color Crayola had called Indian red. So it says here, chestnut replaces a color Crayola called Indian red. From New York Times, July 27, 1999. After sifting through more than 250,000 suggested names, Crayola has renamed its reddish brown crayon to avoid misunderstandings over the color's origin. The color Indian red, which Crayola said was based on reddish brown pigment commonly found near India, was dropped because teachers complained students thought it described the skin color of American Indians. So you see how they're trying to bullshit that they're trying to say that it resembles something in India, but we know exactly what they meant when they named this Crayola Indian red. Look at the color, it's almost brown, right? Continuing, it says the new name will appear on 15 million crayons each year beginning in September. It is only the third time in the company's 96-year history that a color has been changed. Only the third time. So why is this so controversial? And why did they have to change it? They knew eventually you would wake up and notice and put two and two together. Nearly 100,000 people from age 3 to 90 submitted names, including 155 people who suggested chestnut. Other popular suggestions included red clay, clay red, and Mars red. Others rejected names included ginger spice, crab claw red, old penny, there you go, old penny, and baseball mitt. One person even suggested the crayon formerly known as Indian red in honor of the rock musician formerly known as Prince. Very funny. Again, so I just wanted to put this into perspective before I start getting into the historical accounts of the physical characteristics of the indigenous by the early settlers, explorers, conquistadors. Alright, so let's get on with the video. From Carlos Cuervo Marquez, 1858 to 1930, ethnologist, botanist, military general, and historian, it says the Negro type is seen in the most ancient Mexican sculpture. The Negroes figure frequently in the most remote traditions of some American pueblos. It is to this race doubtlessly belongs the most ancient skeletons, distinct from the red American race, which have been found in various places from Bolivia to Mexico. It is likely that we repeat America was a Negro continent. Again, we repeat, America was a Negro continent. Carlos Cuervo Marquez from the Estudios Arqueológicos y Etnográficos, Volume 1, Madrid, 1920. So, another correlation here, everybody, but we always got static telling us, you can't believe everything you read on the internet, right? So the good thing is, I was actually able to find this book in Spanish. They cited white to an unequivocally black skin. There you go, black skin. Alright, so black skin, alright, copper color, right? This is a 1877 delegation, as the picture was described to be. This is a map of Peru. You can see the copper colored people there, and Tierra del Fuego natives to the right. That's in South America, Argentina. Over to the left is Big Loon, a Blackfeet Indian. Over to the right is a Bird Rattle, pagan tribe, and in the middle just another copper colored native. Here we have a depiction of a map. It says Mar de Ethiopia, and it's actually on top of South America though. So it's referring South America to Ethiopia. Towards the left you see a tobacco Indian, either in Virginia or in the Caribbean. And of dark skin, as it says many times throughout history, dark skinned people were usually referred to as Ethiopian. And as it says here in the history of Hernan de Soto in Florida, I got this from the footnote. It says Ethiopian is a name that anciently was given to dark colored people. Alright, so I mean we already knew that, but there's more correlation, right? And to the left we have Beji or Beji. In the middle we have Billy Bowlegs, and on the right we have a North American Indian from Kalispell. It says here 1924. This is Bird on the Ground is his name, as you can see, with his pipe and his staff in his hand. And the clothing has symbols, native symbols like the cross and everything before it was hijacked. To the left we have Black Thunder. In the middle we have Black Owl from Wisconsin. And to the right we have a copper colored Native American. To the left, Blackfoot Chief. On the right, Geno Smith. Before and after. So do you remember who you are? Let's continue. The American Nations, or Outlines of a National History of the Ancient and Modern Nations of North and South America. It says, of this wide western hemisphere, let us retrace the history. Of all the nations dwelling here, let us recall the memory. So they're talking about it, all the tribes, right? All the peoples living here. It says, from the University of California Library. This book is from 1836, alright? So let's see. Alright, so I just want to belly flop to a couple parts of this book. Right here in the introduction on page 32 it says, thought it is a positive fact that many ancient nations of the East, such as the Libyans, Moors, Etruscans, Phoenicians, Hindus, etc., had heard of America, or knew nearly as much of it as we did of Australia and Polynesia 100 years ago.
And if you've been following the journey, you've been watching my videos and other videos on YouTube from other scholars, you know, we're relating, we know this is the old world. So of course, you know, these nations were probably also here and they knew of America, of course. Continuing, it says, it is a certain that America contained anciently, as even now, a crowd of distinct nations and tribes, some of which were quite civilized, perhaps as much as the Spaniards led by Columbus, the others more barbarous, but not entirely savage. There were but few, if any, real savages in America, dwelling in woods without social ties. Most of them were wandering tribes of fishermen or hunters. Alright, so now we're going to get to the part that's going to correlate to what we've been learning, right, about the characteristics. As there were formerly in America, as now, tribes of all complexions as elsewhere, yellowish, olive, coppery, tawny, reddened, brown, incarnate or white, and even blackened or Negro-like. Again, blackened or Negro-like. How much more correlation do we need? Continues, says, tall and dwarfish men from 8 to 4 feet in size, called giants and pygmies, men with various frames, skulls, and features of all the sorts found in the Eastern Hemisphere. Continuing, it says, the Americans had long before Columbus large cities built of stones, bricks, or wood, with walls, ditches, temples, palaces, some of which were of immense size and population. One of them was Otulum, near the Palenque, was 28 miles long, equal to Thebes, Babylon, and Kinosh in size and monument. And further down in this book it says, respecting the chronology of the American annals, it is rather obscure and doubtful, but perhaps not more so than that of all ancient nations except the Chinese. It frequently ascends as far as the floods and even creation. Right? As far as the floods and creation. Are you understanding what they're trying to tell us there? So just like the Bible, right? These people's oral tradition goes all the way back to creation, or the flood, right? The flood of Noah, or in the Garden of Eden, right? Creation, when Hawa made the heavens and the earth. All right, so let's continue. It says, the most ancient dates are found among the Toltecas and Atlantes. Look at that word, Atlantis. Mexicans or Aztecas, the Muyuscas, Onquins, Lenapis, etc. Alright, and almost done with this book. Further down, or in later chapters of this book, it says here, American anthropography will teach that there were men of all sizes, features, and complexions in this hemisphere before 1492, notwithstanding the false assertions of many writers who take one nation for the whole American group. The Ushiks, the Puruais, the Parias, the Chongs, etc. were as white as the Spaniards. Wow, as white as the Spaniards, right? It's interesting to know what these tribes were, or where they came from. It says 50 such tribes were found in South America, while many tribes of Choco, the Manabis, the Yaruras, and etc. were as black as Negroes, right? They were as black as Negroes. All the other shades of brown, tawny, and coppery were scattered everywhere. It says here, there was not a single red man in America, unless painted such. Right? So they're basically telling you, it's not that, you know, that tag that they have to the Native American as the red man, you know, that wasn't the case. He's clearly telling you they were more coppery, brown, you know, tawny, you know, black as Negroes, not red. All right, so let's continue with this video into another source. So another historic account. This is Verrazano's voyage along the Atlantic coast of North America, 1524, and you know, the east coast of America, what he saw there, and the natives that he encountered on this side of the world. Let's go. Alright, so on page 7 of this book, this account from Giovanni Vasaro, it says here, regarding the Indians, some wear certain garlands of feathers or birds. They are dark color, not much unlike the Ethiopians. Alright, so they're saying that they're dark in color, just like in Ethiopian. And in those days, we know that Ethiopian was referenced a lot to people of dark skin or dark complexion, or peoples living in lands where it was only people of copper color, like the third Ethiopia or the farthest Ethiopia, right? Continuing says, and hair black and thick. Who has black and thick hair? Not very long, which they tie together back on their head in the shape of a little tail. As for the symmetry of the man, they are well proportioned, of medium stature, and rather exceed. So he's telling them how, the physical aspects of the Aborigines he's inhabiting, and who does that sound like too? And in the very next page, on page 8, he starts talking about some other natives he encountered in the East Coast. And on the bottom part of page 8 it says, which young man learned of this people that they are thus of dark color, like the others. So just like the others he saw, they are dark colored, this other tribe he's talking about. The flesh more lustrous, of medium stature, the face more clear cut, much more delicate of body, and other members of much less strength and intelligence. So we got another account here. This guy is called Vicente Riva Palacio from 1832 to 1896. He was a military general, politician, historian, writer, and grandson of the first black president of Mexico, Vicente Guerrero, it says here, right? Did you know Mexico had a black president? Now, it says, it is undisputable that in very ancient times, the Negroes occupied Mexico. They brought their own religious cults and ideals. And that's from the book Mexico a través de los siglos, volume 1, page 63 to 67, Mexico 1887. And here's the PDF. I was able to find it, Mexico a través de los siglos. Again, here's a cover. Let me show you what I found here. And look at the Indian, as you can see, copper color, right? So-called Negro. Just like it says in Webster's Dictionary, 1828, American, a native of America, originally applied to the aboriginals or copper color races found here by the Europeans. So again, look at these Indians on this book cover, copper color, alright? And this is the book again, Mexico a través de los siglos. There's the cover inside the book. Once you get to page 63 and through 67, you start reading this part of El Hombre Negro, as it's called here, as how he is the original inhabitant of the Americas. Alright, so let's read some small segments of this here. It says, the Indians are of a copper or red clay color. Again, copper or red clay color, just like Webster's Dictionary. And they delight in everything which they imagine may promote and increase it accordingly. From the book Lies My Teacher Told Me, Everything Your American History Textbooks Got Wrong by James W. Lowen. And it's a good book. We're going to belly flop to page 43 right now. Alright, so I'm going to start in this part where it says Columbus' son Ferdinand. So it says Columbus' son Ferdinand, who accompanied the admiral on his third voyage, reports that people they met or heard about in eastern Honduras are almost black in color. Black in color. Alright, and they say ugly in aspect, probably Africans, right, in his perspective, because he thinks everybody comes out of Africa. Alright, so it continues, says the first Europeans to reach Panama, Balboa and company, reported seeing black slaves in Indian town. Again, black slaves in an Indian town. The Indians said that they had captured them from a nearby black community. Again, nearby black community. What do they mean by that? Oral history from Afro-Mexicans contain tales of pre-Columbian crossing from West Africa, supposedly, right? According to him. In all, then, data from diverse sources suggest that the pre-Columbian voyages from West Africa to America were probable. But we're going to read later on, we're going to talk about this, that, it's known that it's 4 times harder to come from Africa to America than the other way around, from America to Africa, because there's a current. If we follow it, even without paddles, just by floating or just by following the current, it'll bring you up from the Caribbean up to North America, all the way over to Europe and down to Africa, West Africa. And we're going to see this later in another book called Africans and Native Americans by Jack Forbes. Alright, Alright, so before I proceed, I wanted to talk to you about this image right here and where it's from, actually in Mexico. So you can see it's copper colored Native Americans. So if you Google Bonampak murals, you're gonna get this. As you can see, all these images from this actual Mayan temple they actually found inside. The painting was still preserved, and it actually tells you, you know, how they look like. So let's read a little bit about it. Alright, it says here, the discovery of the Bonampak murals. As you can see, it says the classic Maya site of Bonampak in the state of Chiapas, Mexico, so it's located in Chiapas, Mexico, is best known for its mural paintings. The murals cover the walls of 3 rooms in the so-called Temple de las Pinturas, or Temple de las Pinturas, Temple of the Paintings, or Structure 1, a small building on the first terrace of Bonampak's Acropolis. Alright, so you can do your research on it a little bit more. You'll find some interesting stuff in it. So before I continue with Bonampak, I have this book. It's called An Inquiry into the Distinctive Characteristics of the Aboriginal Race of America by Samuel George Morton. Alright, so we're going to go into this book just so we can take a look at what he's saying. So right from the beginning of this book, the author clearly explains to us what he's seeing in these regions of the world. It says, "It is chiefly my intention to produce a few of the more strikingly characteristic traits of these people to sustain the position that all the American nations, excepting the Eskimo, are of one race, and that this race is peculiar and distinct from all others." So he's saying that a lot of the tribes are basically almost one, except the Siberian Eskimos, right? Alright, so it says physical characteristics. It is an adage among travelers that he who has seen one tribe of Indians has seen all. So much do the individuals of this race resemble each other, notwithstanding their immense geographical distribution and those differences of climate which embrace the extremes of heat and cold. The half-clad Fuegian, shrinking from his dreary winter, has the same characteristic lineaments, though in an exaggerated degree, as the Indians of the tropical plains, and these again resemble the tribes which inhabit the region west of Rocky Mountains, those of the great valley of the Mississippi, and those again which skirt the Eskimo on the north. All possess alike the long, lank, black hair, the brown or cinnamon-colored skin, again, brown or cinnamon-colored skin, the heavy brow, the dull and sleepy eye, the full and compressed lips, again, full and compressed lips, and the salient but dilated nose. And continuing in the very next page, it says here, "It cannot be questioned that physical diversities do occur, equally singular and inexplicable, as seen in different shades of color, varying from a fair tint to a complexion almost black." Again, from a fair tint to almost black. When they mean fair, they mean light-skinned, like a light-skinned Negro, right, or black person. And this too under circumstances in which climate can have little or no influence. So also in reference to stature, the differences are remarkable in entire tribes, which moreover are geographically proximate to each other. These facts, however, are mere exceptions to a general rule. Okay, so they're saying this is an exception, though, to a general rule, and do not alter the peculiar physiognomy of the Indian, which is undividingly characteristics as that of the Negro. Alright, so again, he's saying that you cannot doubt that the Indian undividingly has characteristic of that of the Negro. For whether we see him in the athletic Charib or Carib, right, athletic again, or the stunned Chima in the dark Californian, again dark Californian, or the fair Boroa, he is an Indian still, and cannot be mistaken for being of any other race. He's not African. He's clearly telling you, even though they have these Negro characteristics, and they're clearly, like the dark Californian, athletic Charibs, they are not African or from any other place. They are Indian, and cannot be mistaken for being of any other race. Alright? And this is one of the murals in this temple, as you can see. The hue or the color of their skin. This is another mural there. and I'm gonna give you a little close-up of this. Just wanted you to see how it looks like from far away. These people, Owen II, or right under the king of Maya, they have dreadlocks. So here you can see the dreadlocks, right, coming out of their hair. It's clearly dreadlocks. Here's another picture. It's more saturation, more color, so you can distinguish. Look at the dreadlocks coming out of their head. All right, and there's another mural, so you can see another reference here. And as you can see, all copper colored Native Americans. This is how the walls look in there in one of the temples. All right, so you can take a look, get a perspective, so you can see that, you know, how more clear can it be? These are Mayas, these are ancient Mexicans. All right, so I just want you to see that before I ended the video. You know, this is a good time to end it because it's already an hour and 10 minutes into it. I think I don't want to saturate you with too much info. I want you to meditate on what I've shown you, and please tune into the next video because I'm going to continue. I have way more correlation evidence and historic data to share with you guys. So thank you for being here. Thank you for taking this journey with me, and you know, blessings. Wow.
When I found out there were 8 presidents before George Washington, I wanted to smack somebody. You know, I wanted to know why I was taught otherwise. Just tell me the whole story. I'll fill in the blanks, but don't, you know, don't tell me something that you think I'm supposed to know.
We're indentured servants and we got a black president now?
The last point I'm going to make on this is that Africans and Negroes are 2 different peoples. You know, race and skin colour are really a red herring. Okay, it's a kind of divisive lie that has been put about, and I'm going to go into this a bit more in detail. Yeah, to separate people by perceived race is a distraction. Okay, so we all think that all black people are the same, basically, but they're not. Africans and Negroes are different. They have a different skeletal structure, different skull shape, and one interesting thing is African people, real Africans, cannot grow hair like Negroes can. So African men cannot grow beards. All right? African women cannot grow afros. Right? It's a very powerful thing. If you see real African women, you'll see that they've always got very, very short hair because they can't grow it. Very quickly, Adam was not the very first man. The Bible is only covering a period of time which is about 7,000 years, the last 7,000 years of Earth's history. It doesn't cover before that period. There were people before that period, and the first verses of the Bible actually tell you that if you read it properly and you read it with the translating the Paleo-Hebrew. Some of the words aren't translated quite correctly, and you know, gives you an impression that it's all happening contemporaneously, but it's not. It's actually there's like a gap period in between the first 2 verses. So the biblical Israelites were black. It says that Ham, this is according to the Zondervan Bible Dictionary, Ham was the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes. They're separate people. But the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, Canaanites. So it's telling you there that, again, the Egyptians and what became the Africans were black people. So going through the Bible, I'm not going to go through all of these, but yeah, Joseph in the Bible was so much like an Egyptian that his own brothers didn't recognise him. So obviously he looked like an Egyptian, so you know the Israelites were black people. Moses was also an Israelite, but he was raised under the nose of Pharaoh, so you know he'd kind of stand out if he was a white guy. And he was also mistaken as an Egyptian by the daughters of the priest of Midian. And also Moses' sister, Miriam, was turned white as a punishment. So there's a lot more biblical references that tell you that the Israelites were actually black people. But yeah, you can like go through it in the Bible. And throughout the what's called the Renaissance period, all of the artwork was replaced throughout Europe. But because Russia, well, it was a kind of insular society at that time, Renaissance didn't get to Russia. So you can go online and search for Russian icons, and you'll find that everybody who was portrayed in the Bible were portrayed black. And yeah, after Renaissance, all that artwork was destroyed and replaced with white-niced versions. But 500 years ago, prior to 500 years ago, this is how they were always depicted. And the last thing is that this man is the ex-president of Egypt, and he was quoted on television to say, "We can't accept the Jews because they left here black but came back white." So, and he literally said that on television. And yeah, he was murdered not long after that. So yeah, on a similar note, who were the Spartans? In one of the books that were left out of the Bible, the Maccabees, it tells you that the Spartans were brethren of the Jews there, the Judites there. There's a letter to the Lacedaemonians, as they were called, saying, "Look, we're brothers. Let's make a pact. Let's join together." So it tells you right there that the Spartans were actually black people as well. So that film should have had Denzel Washington playing the guy. So yeah. So, and who were the Trojans? Well, this was quite amazing for me, because I just happened to be reading the Iliad at one point, and I was researching this. And as I was looking at the genealogy chart in the 1611 Bible, the names started to match up with what I was reading in the Iliad. So one of the sons, the great-great-grandsons of Judah, was a guy called Darda. And again, it's in the Iliad that Darda, or Dardanus, was the father of Erichthonius, who was the father of King Tros, who founded Troy. So again, the Israelites were the Trojans. So the Trojans were black too. Slaves also came from Europe, and this is the evidence of it. Obviously, evidence of this kind is kind of scant. You can't find very much around, but every now and again you find some bit of writing that gives you clues. This is from Benjamin Franklin, 1751, and he says, "Why should Pennsylvania, founded by the English, become a colony of aliens who will shortly be so numerous as to Germanize us instead of us Anglifying them, and will never adopt our language or customs any more than they can acquire our complexion?" Okay, saying that they weren't black people. Says, which leads me to add one remark: the number of purely white people in the world is proportionably very small. All of Africa is black or tawny, brown. Asia, chiefly tawny. America, exclusive of the newcomers, wholly so. And in Europe, the Spaniards, Italians, French, Russians and Swedes are generally of what we call a swarthy complexion. Swarthy means black. As are the Germans also. Okay, so he underlines the point: why increase the sons of Africa by planting them in America? So literally, the Germans and most Europeans at that time, 1751, were black people. Yeah, history has been rewritten. So this is one of the journeys of the people from the what's known as the Holy
Jerusalem,
Land,
basically.
Britain actually started through a black Hebrew Israelite who was a Trojan prince. Okay, his name was Brito. It's been anglicised to Brutus. And what happened was, after the fall of Troy, he set out with 300 ships off to find a mythical land in the west. Okay, it's not written there, but he actually went in, he landed in France at one point. He sailed up a French river and started fighting the French, the pre-French, I guess. And him and his men basically fought their way all the way into the interior of France and realised that they were kind of cut off. His men were kind of stuck in the middle of France, surrounded by their enemies. And thought, well, you know, we're not going to do very much here, so let's leave. But obviously their mark is still there, Brittany. Yeah, in the past, places got named after the people that were there. So Brittany, Bretagne, is a mark that this man was there. What happened was Brutus, Brito, landed in 1103 BC. In Totnes, of all places.
That's correct.
Yeah.
There's a stone there.
Well, we'll get into that. Yeah. So when he landed here, he found that the country was overrun with red-headed giants, and the king of the giants was called Albion, and that's again places were named after the people. So the country was called Albion. So essentially, Brito and his men killed all the giants apart from one, Albion's brother, called Gog-Magog. He left Gog-Magog alive because one of Brito's men, Quirinius, wanted to fight this 18-foot giant. Right, so the giant was kind of nursed back to health. He had to be nursed back to health so he could fight Quirinius. And this epic battle occurred on Plymouth Hoe. And what happened was Quirinius ended up throwing Gog-Magog over the cliff onto the rocks. And the place was called Lam-Go-Mago, which means Giant's Leap. Okay, but now it's called Plymouth Hoe. So Britannia, or Britannia, was named after Brito or Brutus. Brito in Hebrew is basically something like holder of the covenant. Okay, Britannia means land of the covenant. This is the covenant between Abraham and the Most High. Okay, the Creator, specified in the Bible. When Brutus founded his capital city, he called it Troia Nova, New Troy. Okay, there's a tribe near London called Trinovantes, which is telling you that these people lived near New Troy. And yeah, the Romans renamed it Londinium. So Brutus was part of the royal family. He descended from Judah. He's part of the real royal family. You know, the real royal family is descendant of King David. So he was a direct descendant of King David, part of the Zara side of the family.
Not Pharaoh's.
Sorry? Not Pharaoh's, no.
Pharaoh's was the one that got the inheritance.
Yeah, but still, Zara was part of the royal bloodline.
Ah, but he was born second.
I know, but yeah, but the
royal line.
he's still part of the royal line of Judah, but
Yeah,
Pharaoh's had the birthright. Yeah, but you'll see what happens is they connect together in the end,
all right.
in the bloodline. So yeah, the proof of this is in 4th Street in Totnes. You can go right in the street. There's the Brutus stone, which is where he's said to have set foot in Totnes. Also in London, the Church of St Swithin, there's a stone which Brutus brought from Troy, and again you can go to that church and see it. And I already mentioned about the Trinovantes. So, as I said, Britain, or British, means land of the covenant. It's a Hebrew word. And as I said, it's a covenant between the Hebrews and the Creator. So, you know, are we keeping the covenant? Just a quick word about the Anglo-Saxons. The word Saxon actually means sons of Isaac. Okay? The Anglo-Saxons means the angelic sons of Isaac. The angelic sons, and there's been some confusion about this, the angelic sons are the ones that exhibited the fallen angel seed. So the original Saxons were dark-skinned, and the Anglo-Saxons were lighter-skinned. And I didn't actually mention this when I was talking about Greece, but this is the modus operandi of this bloodline. Okay, what they would do is, when there was a population they wanted to conquer, they would infiltrate this population. They would sort of arrive in few numbers, and then some more and a few more, until they had enough power, and they would take over that population, become those people, and rewrite history so you don't know about those people. Okay? And the same thing happened in Germany, Saxony. There was the original Saxons, and then this bloodline came in, took over, and they became the Anglo-Saxons. So it kind of brings us to King James the sixth and the first. He was a black man. Okay. Now you can go to the National Portrait Gallery and you'll see a white guy looking back at you, but those portraits were basically repainted. Okay. What couldn't be painted over were engravings. And in the 1611 Bible, there's an engraving of a black man. He was actually, again, an Israelite of the royal house of Judah, descended from the Pharaoh's line. Okay, that what came in through France. Sorry, yeah, got that, told you. Yeah, so he was the one who had the Bible translated as faithfully as possible at the time, because it says in the foreword, actually, that there were people, and he meant the Roman Catholic Church, who wanted to destroy the word of the Most High. And he didn't want that to happen, so that's why he had the Bible translated. He sat on the thrones of England, Scotland, Ireland, and France, actually, and he unified them into one kingdom. And I said, there's the bogus painting of James. He's been smeared with allegations of homosexuality and sleeping with his mother, but they're all baseless claims. Because how can you be homosexual and have 9 children with your wife? You have to have an awful lot of sex to get 9 children, I think. So yeah, more pictures, engravings of him. And there's an engraving of James and his wife Anne of Denmark with a afro. Yeah. So he reunited the tribes of Israel in England. Right? The Union Jack means the reunification of Jacob. Okay, that's why under the throne, the coronation throne, is the stone of Scone, which is the stone of destiny, the stone of Jacob, the stone that Jacob rested his head on when he wrestled with an wrestled with an angel. Same thing, really. So yeah, that's why that stone is there, because this country is the New Jerusalem. You know, I probably wondered why that song Jerusalem comes from. Guy Fawkes was actually an agent of the Roman Catholic Church, and he wasn't about trying to get rid of Parliament. He was trying to assassinate James. Yeah, because the Roman Catholic Church wanted to stop the Bible being translated.
Well, Parliament was Protestant anyway, so that would have served them as well.
Probably, but the main aim was to kill James. So this is James' grandson, Charles II. Okay, there's also a white-niced version of him, but one painting did survive, and it matches up with again an engraving of Charles II, and he was the last of the Stuart line. And what happened was the the Roman Catholic Church, or let's put it, the Ashkenazi bloodline, basically finally succeeded in removing this royal line off the throne, and they replaced it with an Ashkenazi German bloodline.